Good. We're back.
We're live. Where are we live from, Neil?
Coming at you live from the Nerve Center in Treaty 6 territory of the United Way, Saskatoon and area.
And we have our friend Andrea, who's actually just sitting next door in the room next door to us for the United Way.
Andrea Howe, she is a member of our organizing committee who put this lovely event together for you. But so I hope all of you enjoyed a delicious lunch and had a good break. I enjoyed my crow and my shoe. That's what I was eating for lunch. I have an apology to make just in regards to this morning. We started out our conference just by acknowledging all of the people that have, all of the people and organizations that have actually helped Wîcihitowin become what it is today. And in our haste to get the conference underway, in my haste, not our haste.
It's okay, we're a team now.
Sorry to throw my partner under the bus.
No.
In my haste,
Okay.
in acknowledging the partner organizations, and this is the one. We saved the best for last.
That's
Maybe
right.
that one, hey? Maybe the best for last.
That's right.
But one of the organizations, the partner organizations that has been here from the very start and has offered nothing but continuous support for Wîcihitowin is the United Way of Saskatoon and area. And they've been a partner organization right from the start. In fact, if you've joined us over the couple of years, you'll know that one of the co-founders of the conference, Ashley Casius, actually was an employee of the United Way of Saskatoon and area at the time that it started. So our hats off and our kudos definitely go out to the United Way of Saskatoon and area, because without their commitment and investment, to all of this, I don't know where we'd be today, quite honestly, to be frank.
Absolutely.
And part of just the logistics too that takes place. Dean in accounting, I hope you're watching as well too, but all of our hats go off to you. I know all of us at the team, we over the years, we've there's been over $1 million invested into Wîcihitowin over the last number of years, and so someone, in order to process that much investment, you need an anchor and an organization as strong as the United Way of Saskatoon and area to help us.
Weren't some of the four of our major funders, our supporters were from the four original young men who started this, correct? Is that right? And who were those four?
So those four people were Brad Bird, and he was a member of the Aboriginal Friendship Centers of Saskatchewan at the time. Ashley Casius, who was a director at the United Way of Saskatoon and area. Jill Dorval, who is retired now, but was a former director of Indigenous relations with the city of Saskatoon, and some other guy.
Some really funny guy, I think.
But it was pretty darn cool.
This guy.
And one of the neat things I think about them, again, too, I think it's just, it started as an idea, you need a team of people. You need a team of people. April and I were having some good jokes throughout the break, and reflecting, I think, on where we've come from and how we've grown and how much fun we're having today. That's one of the things I think. Let's get into a little bit of more fun, and I want to start. Some of the things that we're most excited about is we're looking at some of who's signing in. So we want to give a couple of shout outs to some of the very special guests that are joining us today virtually. I know we've got Christy out in Las Vegas, Nevada, who signed in for her very first Wîcihitowin conference. So thank you, Christy, for signing in out there. We've got Dean Gamble in his class at SIIT, that their mental health class, the second year, that have signed in and tuned in. We've got,
I believe our elder, Gilbert Hewestad, actually went straight over to the First Nations University to teach a class, and I'm hoping that they are also watching in, and Gilbert is also there too. Gilbert, thank you so much this morning for your prayer and your words for us to start us off in a good way.
So special shout out to you in that class over there.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoy the afternoon. Really excited to have you hosted.
And I believe students from Johnson Choyama School.
Yep, we've got, we're very
Saskatchewan.
fortunate to have a big complement of Johnson Choyama graduate students signing into the conference as well too. So welcome everybody. We want to keep the chat active. April and I are checking Twitter, we are checking Instagram, and we're checking Facebook.
And
I told
also,
you this morning, sorry April,
it's okay.
she's looking for more Facebook friends and followers.
I am.
Let's get
April
her up
Sora. Please follow me on Twitter, please.
Yes.
I want more than Neil. Let's see if I can get more than Neil.
Kiwi81.
On Twitter, April Sora. Thank you. And also a shout out to the students at Mount Royal. Apparently there's classes there that are also tuning in today to watch.
Miss Gordon's class, I believe, is one of the classes that's
great.
tuning in as well too. So shout out to them
Yeah.
as well. Keep coming in. I want to give a special shout out. I was on this morning, April, doing some plugs for the conference, virtual conference on iops.ca. It's a Facebook group that is promoting Indigenous labor market development, amongst many other things. So Nathan Arias is the individual that runs that. So I want to keep shouting out to him. We're going to, as I said, we're going to keep checking our chat and our texts. Special shout out to the survivors group of over 70 survivors that Lorna and Eugene Arcan are some of the. Yes, absolutely. So maybe, please talk about that, April.
So I know Lorna and Eugene Arcand have been working with the survivors group, and this was a special piece of art that was commissioned by Simone McLeod for these masks. And they made, I believe, was it 1,000 of these masks that went out, and they were sold out before they were even completed. So these are, I'm not sure if they're going to be making more, but if they are, you will find out on our Wîcihitowin conference page and or on Twitter. So yeah, these are just beautiful. Every Child Matters. They were made for, of course, Orange Shirt Day, which just passed.
So for those of you that aren't familiar with Orange Shirt Day, September 30th every year is Orange Shirt Day. But going back, one of the things before we segued into this afternoon's presentations, we just wanted to give a little bit of a recap of what we observed this morning. And I think that, going on the theme of the masks, one of the neat things I think that Nigan pointed out in his presentation was the beaded masks. He mentioned kind of the artisans, I think, that started to emerge when we all needed PPE and those things to keep each other safe, but we still needed to continue to work. And I knew right away, as soon as this thing started, we were going to see some type of traditional garb over our mouths. So I was quite excited to start seeing the beaded masks. I always wondered, I see moose hide masks. That would probably be the best thing to be breathing in. I don't know about the exhaling, how breathable moose hide is, but I'm sure the aroma coming in would be a lot better than some of the hand sanitizer that you tend to smell out there sometimes. But again, keep active on the chat, please. That's one of the things that we want to do.
And just maybe going back, just recapping, we hope that, if you were with us this morning, that you enjoyed our speakers and, our Lieutenant Governor Russ Morasti talking about his deep connection to the land and learning from his grandparents about hunting and trapping and how that carried him through his whole life and continues to, of course, those learnings. And I think too, it's interesting how, COVID has also brought a lot of people back out to the land, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And I know some parents are out there with their children, taking their children out into the forest and doing some learnings out there. So, we have a lot to learn from Indigenous peoples, I think. And, a lot of things that were taken away, hopefully now will slowly be, given back and being able to take pride in that as well, like Nigan had said. So just sort of going back to some of those things. And, if you weren't with us this morning, we did hear an amazing presentation from Nigan Sinclair. It will be posted on the Wîcihitowin Wîcihitowin webpage.
Yep, webpage.
Yeah.
And all of the presentations will be posted there post-conference for again, those of you that weren't able to capture them or to participate, today and tomorrow, we will have all those there. But before we segue into the next one, I just again want to pull out a couple of things that Nigan said. And one of the things that really resonated with me and stuck with me ever since that I watched his presentation was when he started articulating and talking about Indigenous stories and kind of some of the consistent elements that that are present in all of those stories and all of those teachings. And one of the things that, he talked about, he's a member of the Meday Society and those types of things. But one of the things that when he said kind of like there's always a hero or a heroine at the end, or it's always kind of a good story. You always go through a time of hardship, and I think if we can step back from our own personal feelings, we could see we're probably in one of those times right now, and I think we can find comfort from storytellers and the knowledgeable people such as Nigan, that we are going to get through this, we are going to get through it stronger. It's going to be hard, and I think just like when we were given direction and we asked for advice from our elders and our survivors committee, they asked us, to walk into the fire. And I can recall, how hard that was, when we first asked them. And I don't know if many of you, but I know in my own family, not all my families made it through this pandemic. Not related to COVID, but I lost an uncle through this experience, and that was one of the most, I think, that's when this thing really started to hit home for me and my family. I think, just staying home and that type of thing, I was quite prepared to stay home and not go to work for a little while. That was probably one of the most comforting things. But the things that I totally did not expect, was losing somebody you love during a time like this. And that was hard. I think like many of you, just like Nigan said, nobody is immune, and this thing does not discriminate against anybody. But one of the things for me was that I lost an uncle, and it was the toughest thing ever. He's been a big part of my life. I think, somewhere I get a lot of my bad jokes from, that my Uncle Harv definitely influenced that, and it was tough to see my family and my cookum in particular, not to be able to hug her family or not have any of us be able to help her through that grief. And I think, it brings up emotions in me now that I've always wondered. I think, when are we going to ever get to grieve, and get through that the way we normally would? When are we going to get to support each other? So, I think those experiences are definitely not unique to my family. And I think that's one of the exciting things and one of the things I was most looking forward to coming together, even if it is through a computer screen. I think the amount of support that we can offer each other in any way that we can. I think that this pandemic hopefully connected us to way more people than we've ever been.
Absolutely.
I looked at the registration list and I could see that we were connecting with people right across Canada. We gave some shout outs to people that aren't even in the same country as us. So I think, through this fire and through all of this pain, I think, there's different opportunities. I'm comforted in the fact that my cookum we're going to organize a gathering, a family gathering, so we can, kind of collectively work through our grief. But those are just the type of things I think that aren't lost on us throughout this challenging time in our history. The world came to a stop, and it got pretty darn scary there for a little while, right? But I think this next presentation is a good opportunity and a good reminder for what can come through on the other side. What are some of the things we can look forward to as we work ourselves through this fire?
And I just wanted to, one thing that Nigan said, and I wrote it down, is that when we face adversity and sickness, violence and strife, it's by turning together that we find solutions and enact the solutions, which I think is the really important part, right? We can find solutions, but I think most importantly, that we enact them, that we act, that we do something about it. And we see Nigan on the streets, picking up needles, working with, the Mama Bear Patrol or clan. And, it's so encouraging, I think, to everybody, even though it's sadness, and he says it's sadness to see the people on the streets, but it's also ways of that we can act to help, right? Yeah. I think that's, it's such a strong message as well.
And I think that, as we experience this pandemic together, those are the things that we can look to, as we could we could start to see the resilience.
Mm.
You know, we could look for the helpers. You know, early on, that was something I know that I needed to do, along with, you know, those close to me, that I needed to start acknowledging all the people that started helping, you know, that started rolling up their sleeves and saying, hey, we can be helpful here. So those are the things, you know, and some of these next two speakers, you know, are definitely, they definitely helped me get through these past couple of months. One of these individuals, some of you may or not recognize him. His name is Swindler. But this young gentleman came to my attention through Facebook. Actually, I'm not a very active Facebook user, but I frequent it quite a bit for my news and that type of thing. But I can remember one day, this young fella, Davis, and some of you guys, his name is Swindler. You might be able to find the video on Facebook. We just found it actually through the lunch hour, and I shared it with April. I said, this is how this young man came to my attention. And I seen his nice, beautiful, fluffy head of hair and his voice, you know, and just he was just interacting, you know, the way that April and I are just interacting, but he was doing it in his native tongue. He was doing it in Cree, and he was just talking, you know, and the parts that I did understand, you know, were some of the most, it hit home pretty hard, and I needed to hear it at the time, because it reminded me of someone who I had lost before, you know, someone who kind of helped me start on this journey. It was my own grandfather, my chum, Jerry Caseless. And it's one of the things that he always told me, you know, as he was building me up as a young person, and he was sharing stories of Indigenous pride and our family stories. But he said that none of this stuff is gone or it's dead, you know. He said all of the stuff about you, Neil, you know, all of the Indian in you is inside, you know, because you can often get sad about the losses we've all experienced, whether that's a loss of language, whether that's a loss of dwelling or family structure and those types of things. And we know, you know, through the attacks and policy targeted towards Indigenous people, those were the targets, you know, culture, language, lifestyle. But my chum told me, he said, don't worry, you know, and he wasn't scared, you know, and he shared the story with me, because I would, you know, he would see me scared sitting at his feet. And he'd say, we put all the good stuff inside, you know, nobody can get it. They can cut your hair, they can take away your dwelling, they can watch how you speak, but everything that is you is already inside of you. And when I was watching that video of this young man, Swindler, that was one of the things that I understood when he was saying it, was he said when he was, and this is my understanding, I don't understand Cree, but through the translation was he said, the language isn't dead, you know, it's inside of you and it just needs to be woken up, you know. So I think for those of you that are trying, you know, to learn your language, don't be afraid to keep tripping forward. You know, I think that's one of the other teachings I think that we've all gotten, especially over the years in Wîcihitowin, as we've gathered together. It's okay to laugh, it's okay to cry, and all those emotions are just part of the human experience, and we need to embrace all of those things. So I think that even April, she's practicing some Cree words in between the sessions, you know, and falling forward, and we're having a really good time learning together, right? So I want to introduce our next two speakers to you, and I want to actually show you who they are. I'm going to read their bio, so please don't just excuse me while I'm looking down at my notes, but I just don't want to miss anything. So our next two speakers, Horace and Swindler, are Cree language advocates from Thunderchild First Nation. Originally from Sweetgrass First Nation, Ira never claimed to be a fluent Cree speaker, but always spoke Cree. When she married Maxwell Horace, a fluent Cree speaker, it inspired her to better herself with the language. When Ira and Maxwell finished raising their children, they were provided with a second chance at parenting with Davis. When Davis, their grandson, was born, Maxwell and Ira taught Davis the language right from the moss bag. 17 years later, Davis's first language remains to be Cree. Before he could attend school, Ogama gave him quick lessons in English. In his young life, he has paved the way for many youths and has inspired them to learn about Cree language and culture. Davis and Ogama have made numerous videos that feature Davis and his grandparents speaking and teaching fluently in Cree. Many of these videos have since gone viral. Please join me in welcoming Ira, Horace, and Davis Swindler.
Tanse, my name is Ira. I'm from Thunderchild First Nation. We're here today to talk about, we decided that we would call our presentation Waking Up Our Language. Because it's important we understand that our language is not dead, it's not lost, it's merely sleeping, and it's up to us to wake it up. I want to talk a little bit about where our language is, where it got us, where we are today. And I'll also talk about how we were able to retain the language, how we were able to instill the language in our home to our grandson, who's sitting beside me. But I'll give him an opportunity to speak and introduce himself. But kita tamskat na wow. Iron siga sun kapti ko na kutsinia. Enoh te tiputa mana no sigo. Kipik skon na umste hewanita ya ke gotan si kaigis. Kosko na makaito ya. Maga ngasuna mo ay ganus se matyo ista kapik sko kawita mag wow tan deo tuya. Oh.
Danse Davis John Maxwell Horace na sigasun kapti ko na utsinia. Egoya nimussa me gonogo me kipe opigitse kakkego wiwagik snamotse kai sneheoyan. I am Davis Swindler from Thunderchild First Nation. I am 17 years old and I was raised by my grandparents.
Our language has been lost. People keep saying it's lost, but we need to understand it's not. It's up to us. But I also want to encourage fluent Cree speakers. I never call myself fluent because there's some words I can't translate today. But us Cree speakers, to encourage other people to speak the language, but also be flexible. Also allow them to make the mistakes. For me, learning the language at home, I never was given a pen and paper to write it down. I never was given pronunciations. We learned them from the moss bag from our parents. And that's the most important thing. My mom had syllabics. My mom was a Métis, and she wrote syllabics. But at no point in time did anybody give us a pen and paper and say this is how the language is. I know there's universities, there's schools that are teaching how to write Cree, and that's fine, that's okay. I won't condemn those people. But for me, I write the way it sounds, and that's what my comfort zone. Just like the English language is so different from us, from the Cree language. You don't, when somebody reads an English word, take the word, for example, ni. When somebody speaks about the word ni in English, you don't see people jumping all over saying it's supposed to be kani, because there's a K in front, but it's silent. The English language is funny like that. We're not like that. When I pitied a person that on these different sites that ask for a word, how do you say it, how do you pronounce it, and you've got 10 different people telling 10 different things, you're confusing that person. And that's when I pitied a person that's trying to learn the language. We need to hold their hand. We need to help them. And we also need to, we as Cree speakers, we need to do what we did in our home. We need to speak the language at home. In our home, Davis came to us, he's my first grandchild, and in the moss bag, his mushon spoke nothing but Cree to him. He learned the Cree language, and that was his first language. When it came time for school, I had to give him a crash course in English to speak the language. because it's up to us to teach that language. We can't rely on schools. We can't rely on teachers to teach our kids. We are the teachers, and we need to understand that. We had issues trying to educate Davis, but I want him to speak a little bit about his upbringing, and then I'll come back. We'll speak a bit of English, we'll speak a bit of Cree, but we'll try and make sure you understand, the audience understands, because whatever we say in Cree, we'll say in English as well. So, Davis?
Yeah, so like my grandma said, I was raised by my grandparents, and they taught me the very traditional ways, how to walk the red road, how to be a good person. But you know, once in a while we all sway. We all can't be perfect. No one's perfect, but all you can do is try, you know. And I was always taught to encourage and respect and love everybody. And when somebody's trying their best to speak the language, all you can do is encourage them. If they say a word wrong or say it funny, most people will just stand there and laugh at them. But that's not the way I was taught. It's like you don't laugh at them. It's like you can correct them and help them, like encourage them to speak it better, you know? You can help them. When I was a little baby, when I was first born, my grandpa came to the hospital. My grandma and my grandpa were the first ones to come to the hospital. My grandpa was the first one to carry me. He was the first one to carry me. And he was walking up and down the hospital halls holding me, looking at me, talking nothing but Cree to me. He said, "Kake, Kweskenehewan." And then that means one day you're going to be a fluent Cree speaker. Tagatmatsin, that means you're going to become a great hunter. And to this very day, my grandpa showed me all those things. He showed me how to speak Cree, showed me how to become a really great hunter. I wouldn't say I'm the best, but I'm pretty good. And yeah, I guess that's all I got right now. Can just pass it back to my grandma.
So I'll do a little bit of like an interview with Davis. I want people to see his fluency, but also the history too. I want to ask him, and I'll ask him in Cree, and then I'll relate some of it in English after. Dan so my dan spiegi mat stapagwain.
Kagi neoponian igi mat stapagan. Hekta iskoat sekta wapos kagim paha hekta igi neoponian.
So I asked Davis how old he was when he started snaring rabbits, and he told us that he killed his first rabbit at 4 years old. Egwa kamats matsin ka kema na kimusum ki Wîcihitowin kapakon gain tan speak kimats matsin.
Well, kakema nangi Wîcihitowin nimosomana katomatsit kato tapugoa apu manaya ka pansawet apu kapagon get apu kapaktin at muso apu apsamos. Ektaya pegongi kwetsma tanspia pasagan niya nga kaptitan tanspin niya nga kimatsmatsin kito iksnamoine ka egaskitain kapaktina de go kapagon ado apsamos ekta ka kimatsmatsin ekta pego ka gitomatsia egi pasksor apsamos ekta ega epekiweta harego ewitamwet kispenegaskita aino go tutman ekta kamitin pasagan. Ekta semak wewin to pagona agum paktina apsamos. Ekta kagimi pasksgan. Ekta kagimatsmatsian.
Tamigo igita tupone.
Kigamta tadigita tuponian.
So I asked Davis how old he was when he got his first kill. He talked about throughout the years he helped his grandfather skin, gut, cut meat, dress meat, and how he started asking his grandfather when he could hunt. And his grandfather told him, if you can show me you can gut and skin a deer by yourself, then I'll give you a gun. And he did that. He went, when his mushroom killed a deer, he went out and did that to show him. And he earned his gun. And he got his first kill that night. And he was 9 years old. Those are the kinds of things that we've implemented in our home. But we also pride ourselves in calling ourselves a Cree-only zone home. We only speak Cree there. Davis only speaks Cree to his grandfather. He often tells people, if I speak English to my grandfather, I disrespect him. He'll only speak Cree to him. They'll speak Cree to me, our other little boy too. But their grandfather, his grandfather, he never ever speaks English to him. If he ever did, he'd hear it from his grandfather. My husband is a residential school survivor, and he has his own story, and he shared it with me, and it took him how many years to share that story, but he shared it with me, and I'm humbled with that. But we helped each other in a way where he had his language and culture, and he shared that with me. Although I spoke Cree, I wasn't as good a Cree speaker as I am today. And when our relationship began, he would always tell me, "You know how to speak Cree. Why are you speaking English? Speak Cree." Nehiawe, he would tell me every day, to the point where he irritated me. And I told him, why is it so important to you? And one day he told me about residential school, what it did to him, how he ran away from a residential school at 9 years old, and took him 3 days to get home from Onion Lake to Thunderchild, and how every beating he got for speaking the language made him want to retain his language even more. And when he actually left residential school at 9 years old, he made 2 promises to himself. One was that he was never going to lose his language. If anything, he was going to speak Cree better, or there was not going to be a word where he couldn't translate to Cree. The other thing is, if what he endured, what he went through in that school is called school, he didn't want no part of it. He didn't ever want to go to school again. And he kept those 2 promises to himself. So when our relationship started, he made me one day he said, "You know, we end up arguing about the Cree, the English. We'll make a deal," he said. "From here on in, every time you speak English to me, you pay me $1. And if you continue a whole day without speaking English, I'll give you $20. So I thought, easy enough, I'll do it. I don't know how many times I've been paying him $1. But it took me a while, but finally come the day where I was able to. And that was his way of teaching me that culture I almost lost as a young mother before I began my relationship with him. And I knew that Cree was here. It was inside me. It just had to come out. Although I spoke Cree, I didn't speak Cree as good as I should. And today, I can't say I'm fluent. I'd be lying if I said that, because eventually there will be a word that I won't be able to translate. But I know our English and our Cree are very different. For one thing, growing up in a Cree-speaking home, when we started learning English, one of the words we learned was hate. And right away our parents told us, there's no word for that in Cree. Because as Cree people, we don't hate people. We can dislike things, we can dislike their traits, we can dislike certain things, but we never hate. Hate is too harsh of a word. You can't translate it, there's no Cree word for it. There's also words in our language that we can't translate to English. One of the words is Keskimowin, Kakeskimatay. You can say you're guiding them, you can say you're advising them. You'd have to use about 3-4 different words to describe that one Cree word. So our Cree language is very different. And I want to turn it back to Davis again and ask Davis to relate why our Cree language is so important.
Ginehio no my esokama itaka kama. So our language is strong. It has a spirit, and every time we speak the language, it's almost like we're praying, It's like our language is very powerful, and it's not really something to be played with. People will joke around and swear in Cree and stuff, and it's like that's not really the right thing to do. We shouldn't play with our language. It's very powerful.
When we speak Cree, I've been told by elders, We're the nearest to Creator. When elders are lifting that pipe, males, females, you'll notice they speak in our language because that puts us closest to the Creator. That's how powerful our language is. And people, in the English language, there's a lot of swear words. F this, F that, you hear that. But in our Cree language, there is no real swear words. We use body parts to describe things. And if that's swearing, then so be it. But that's all we do is, we can't, the way people say F off, F you today, we can't say that in Cree. Because our Cree is sacred. And there are no swear words in the language. The fact that Davis was fluent in Cree had its struggles. We had struggles because we were so adamant we wanted him to retain that language, to not lose it, that when he was small, we allowed him to watch Pingu or Wapus Bay that spoke Cree. We tried to keep him away from the English language, not that we disliked it, but so that he wouldn't get swayed. So when it come time for him to go to school, we had issues. When he went to Head Start, it wasn't a big issue. One of my cousins was a teacher there, and I spoke with her, and rest her soul, she's deceased now. She took the time to speak to him in Cree, and she taught him in the Head Start program. But the next year, when he come to nursery, we asked the teacher the same thing, and we know she spoke Cree, and yet she didn't. And then Davis comes home, kicks off his shoes, was angry, and told his mushroom, they won't speak Cree there. He said, I don't want to go to school. He said, we had to honor that. We had to respect that. Because we were the ones that told him to speak Cree. So we kept him at home because we didn't want him to be embedded in a foreign language, so to speak. So we searched high and low. I went to all kinds of places, and I started getting angry. My husband had extensive brain surgeries. He had health issues, and we couldn't even educate this little boy. And yet, I know a child has a right to education, and yet we wanted him to continue learning in Cree. So we had many issues. I went to different levels of government. Finally, I came across a gift of language program. And that program was offered in Larange and Onion Lake, Saskatchewan. Onion Lake is 1 hour from our reserve. Larange is like long ways, plus their TH dialect. So I come home from work one day and I told Max, Onion Lake has a Cree immersion program. They're just starting. Let's go see them. Maybe they'll give us some work. We'll homeschool him. Because I was also always afraid of this. Someday somebody would come in and say, you're not giving him his right to education. We'll take him away from you. Always that in the back of my mind. So away we went to Onion Lake to go and see them, to see if they could give us some classwork, books, something for him to study with in Cree. And we get over there and they were just flabbergasted at his Cree speaking. And my husband's mother was originally from Onion Lake, so they knew Max and they knew of us. So they took us on a tour in the school, and before we walked out of that school, they convinced us for him to go to school there. And it's a 60-minute drive from our home to Onion Lake, but we did that whole year. We did it so he could go to school in a Cree immersion school. I worked in North Battleford, which is 60 minutes the other direction. We'd leave every morning the same time. Max would go with him, wait for him all day while he went to school. And eventually, before the end of the year, my husband has uncontrolled seizures, and he had his license taken away. So there are times where they literally hitchhiked, and they made it. That's how adamant we were that he goes to school. So those are issues that we faced. And it came to the point where sometimes I would go to a conference or a meeting where the elders would say, our kids don't speak the language anymore. Our kids don't speak that language. And I'd sit there frustrated because he spoke the language. And look what we were facing. But I'm glad today, with Truth and Reconciliation, with Jordan's principle, I'm glad things are changing. That language is coming back. So we all play that role. I want Davis to speak a little bit of his experience in Onion Lake. He got treated so well over there. I just want him to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so before I went to Onion Lake, I went to school in Thunderchild, where I guess you could say I'm originally from. I went to school there one day, hopped on the bus, and as usual, it was just it was all new to me because everybody's just like speaking English, and then there's just me just sitting there. And then like as soon as I got to the school, it's like, say like I needed to use the washroom, me it's like, "We gam gotsing akitutan," and the teachers be like, "Huh?" It's like, "We gam gotsing akitutan." It's like they don't understand what I'm saying, so they're like, "Yeah." So I can just go walking to the door and open it, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" It's just like, "Hey, we become go maito in akitutan." They didn't understand what I said, so like it made me mad. It made me real mad. And then I waited till the end of the day, got home, and then I told my grandparents, I was like, "I don't want to go to school no more." It's like, I don't like it there. It's like, they don't speak Cree to me. It's like they don't treat me good over there. And then they respected that. I stayed home for a long time, did my hunting, my snaring, my everything. I learned how to pick medicines and everything. I learned everything you could learn off the land from my grandparents. And then eventually they took me to the school in Onion Lake, where they had a side for all the kids that were just learning Cree. Like, they spoke English, but they were just trying to learn Cree. And they had a side for all the kids that were just like me. And that's where I felt like I fit in. Like, and all the teachers were so nice to me. They would speak English to the other half of the kids, and then when they come back to me, it'd be nothing but Cree. And I just loved it there. And like, there'd be some days where my grandma was like, she'd get up and leave real early. She'd have to go to work, and me and my grandpa would get up, we'd have breakfast and get our stuff on. Sometimes it'd even be winter. We just start walking down the road and hitchhike all the way to Onion Lake. It'd take us hours, but eventually we would get there, and the teachers would just be sitting there waiting for me, and they'd just be so happy to see me. And like, all the time, like, people would try to speak English to me, like at the other schools. Like, I'd be so angry, and my anger started building up, and I had other issues like from my childhood. Anger started building up in me, and like, for me, like, my language was a way to release it. My hunting was a way to release it. That's why I fell in love with hunting, because it's so peaceful, it's quiet, and I'm by myself. And like, I was sort of an angry child, you could say, growing up. I had major anger issues, and like, I wasn't the very most like pleasant kid to like people. My grandma could tell you that. But like, they couldn't understand me. I could just be speaking Cree to my grandparents. They'd be like, "Kaya say to it." It's like, anyway, like they can't understand me anyway. And I was just always an angry kid. As soon as somebody bugged me, that was just my way of releasing it. I would go out into the woods and be by myself. Sometimes if I didn't catch anything, it didn't really matter to me, as long as I was out there by myself, just seeing the land and seeing nature. That's what I loved most. And all I can say is just, I really thank Onion Lake School. They let me go to school there, and I really thank them for treating me well. It was a really nice place to be. And I'll pass it back to my grandma.
Yeah, I went to start doing little video clips where I taped Davis when he was about 8 years old. He had a 5-minute conversation with his mushroom, and I kept that with me for a long time. And then one day I was going through my phone, my camera, and I found that video. And I just learned Facebook. I'm kind of not really good with stuff. And I shared that video. He was 8 years old. And they spoke for, I think it's probably 6-7 minutes. Him and his mushroom. And not one word of English. and an 8-year-old boy to sit there. So I shared it on Facebook. That thing just went nuts, and I probably had 80 friends on my list. So it went from share to share to share to share. So I started realizing that not many kids speak the language. And so I continued doing this. But there was also a book writing contest at Saskatchewan Indian Cultural College, where they made this book writing contest where your parents could help you, your teacher could help you. So I sat down with Davis and I said, you know, you want to do a story? And he said, sure, we'll do a story. So him and I wrote the book. He told me what he wanted in the book. I wrote it in Cree and English to my Cree writing. We submitted it, and he won first place. And they wanted him to come to this big conference and present it, to read it in Cree and English. And 12 years old, he was shy. So I made a deal. I said, well, video you. I'll videotape you. You read it in Cree, and you read it in English. They'll display it over there, like probably 1,300 people in the audience. So he agreed. Otherwise, he wasn't going to go to the book launch. So we did that. So after that conference, he won, I don't know how many copies of that book. And he won $500, I believe. So that video, that Cree video, I shared that on Facebook. That thing went viral. So we continued with little video clips like of him showing our little boy as well the language. He would sit there with him and tell him, my little boy, he'd tell him, how do you say cat? Little boy would say minus. So he was passing this language now on to, and I shared those videos. And then I also come up with being a kokum. I do a kokum video, Davis and I. They're comical, but while I capture that audience, I do offer cultural teachings. And Davis asks me questions, and I relate back to him. And those videos go viral. Just recently, we went to Lloydminster. And I was in the store buying stuff, and he comes in, oh, I just had an interview outside. I said, oh, really? Some young man from Poundmaker, his name is Aaron Chikosis. Took him and interviewed him outside on his Cree speaking. That video is viral. It's all over. Like, it saddens me that my grandson is a novelty because he can speak Cree. I'm proud of him, but it makes me sad that that's how much we've lost that language. So we need to do something. We need to all work on it. Us Cree speakers, let's not sit around anymore. Let's help our people. Help one another. Help them. And like Davis said, don't laugh at them. Don't, unless somebody's making a really terrible mistake, I will not correct them. Because when I go to answer them, I'll pronounce it the way it should be pronounced and they'll think about it. But I will not correct them. The one time I corrected a lady who was emceeing and she was referring to her brother and she kept saying, Nimis, Nimis. And she was referring to an older sister. So I corrected her as soon as possible because I didn't want her referring to her brother as her sister. So that's something I corrected. But otherwise, I let people make mistakes. People need to crawl before they can walk. And if we're going to be ridiculing our own people, we can't do it. We can't. We have to stand strong.
One time, my grandma had this idea, which kind of makes me sad she didn't follow through with it. But like, nowadays you can pull a string on like a toy, right? And it'll sing you a lullaby in English, right? But how come you couldn't pull that string and it could sing to you in Cree, or it could say Cree words to you? That's one thing like I really hope for. Like there's a lot of like English toys out there, and like there could be like Cree dolls and stuff out there, and a lot of Cree toys and stuff out there, but like there really isn't. And like for me, like for one of my biggest hopes is like I hope that the language like never dies out. Well, maybe I shouldn't say dies out. I hope it never falls asleep, because our language can never be permanently gone. It just goes to sleep. It's just a matter of us just waking it up. And yeah, I really hope like people continue to speak the language and really try their best to teach everybody and learn. That's one thing I really hope for.
Okay, those videos I spoke of, I'm gonna just do a little video clip. I won't be as harsh as I usually am, because there's sometimes I use a fictional character I call Neon, and like I said, we do these video clips. They're just comical. I'll close with a little video clip of what we usually do. So here goes.
Ai paimoisi matsitain kisunia mentsi.
Tane kando itaman sunias, ne tomana sunias en toimat.
Well, kigoipuko katawist moin.
Kigo en toitaman.
Ai matas, ego masks na, ego no te paskagaso an.
Ne stomanan suniam en oten daw tsakai ge anu men oten daw mamagun ge an casino ego bingo en oten totian semeuitjes.
Ja. Ai pugo kigoipuko katawist moin, ego katute hien pugo mall.
Wah, kuama na. Pension se tau paigin suniaos na ngane mes na muin mana kanok te me tau yan. Ego magesi totetan. Ego.
Sama.
So today with COVID, we need to utilize that time in a good way. For me, for other Cree speakers, while you're sitting at home with your family, there is no reason why a fluent Cree speaker is in a home with others that don't speak the language. We could be passing that language on right now. We need to utilize that time, because what better thing to do than pass on that sacred language? I'm calling myself close to a knowledge keeper now. I've turned to videos. I did a tutorial recently on picking sweetgrass, braiding it, offering that tobacco to Mother Earth. If that's what we have to do, that's what we do, providing we do the protocol, because we need to carry on. We can't sit at home and wait for COVID to pass, because we may grow old waiting, because already it's been how many months and it's not getting easier. So we need to utilize that time we're sitting at home in a good way. And I encourage everybody, pass that language on, because we are the keepers of our language. Here's proof. It's doable. There is no way somebody cannot tell me I can't learn the language. Because if you're headstrong and you want to teach somebody, it'll happen. I have a 9-year-old boy, he'll be 9 on Saturday, that speaks the language as well. And he's going to be another Davis. This language will never leave Davis, because he learned it right from home. Like I said, we can't always rely on teachers. We are the teachers. We need to carry on. So with that, I encourage everybody, nehi awik. I always say, feel free to speak Cree.
Another great presentation.
Thank you very much to Ira and Davis for that awesome presentation. It was pretty, we'll offer some commentary. You'll notice a little bit of change to our set a little bit. We're putting out our social media information and hashtagging. So Ira and Davis, I really hope you're tuned in and you could see all the applause that's going off in the chat. It's just going off right now. So thank you very much. I don't think that we can capture or express maybe the appropriate words with just, for how much was packed into that interaction. So April, do you have anything you'd like to share? Because I'm going to come back and take lots of time for these.
Yes, I know
comments.
you are. So I'm just. That's okay, Neil. Yeah, I loved it. The emphasis on language and how important that is to all cultures, and in particular, of course, Indigenous cultures with, with the residential schools, trying to take all that away always from Indigenous peoples. I think going back to the language and using a language where, what the importance of land and land-based learnings, where there just aren't words in English to express a lot of those things because it's very cultural, it's inherent to the culture. And I think that's what's so important, and that's what they were really emphasizing. I just can't say enough for young Davis Swindler and just how his connection to his culture, his land, and his, of course, his pride in the land. That pride is just so, to me, it's so encouraging, right? When we talk about going forward and what we need to go forward, and it's people like Davis who is so proud of who he is and that he would not give up his language. I mean, the whole idea of them hitchhiking, like all those, like in the middle of winter, it's like one of those stories, those old stories that you always hear about, when I was a little kid. But really, they actually hitchhiked in the middle of winter to get to Onion Lake because that school offered him the ability to continue his language. And he is just so grateful to the Onion Lake School that took him in. And he says, I loved when he says that, it'd be so cold and they'd be hitchhiking. But when he got there, he said, everybody's so happy to see us and to greet us. And, it felt like family to him. And so connecting all of that, to his language, such positive energy and such positive experience, I mean, that's who he is, right? It's part of his identity.
It was really neat, and I think, just the birth, if you go back to this morning's talk, and what Nigan said when he was describing kind of the stories of Indigenous stories and how we, one day we're all going to collectively look back over the years, when we were looking at things like language revitalization and those types of things. And this is going to be one of those stories, where there's that dose of adversity, right in the middle of even just getting there to actually go into a classroom to go and learn. But so we're watching that one kind of play out right before us.
Yeah.
We kind of had a sneak peek at kind of, and you just know this one's going to end in a good way. I think.
And we just hope that, eventually people don't have to hitchhike
Yes.
all that distance to get to classes, right? We hope that it's much more a part of all of our school systems.
And I think, one of the things when we have the Wîcihitowin conversation and we have all of these people and decision makers, all of you in the room with all of your respective roles, I hope you're listening to these stories and you're actually finding a place for yourself in this story. You're finding yourself in the story and you're trying to envision kind of the end that Nigan articulated. We want to get to the happy ending. How do we get there? And all of us has a role to play in that. I think if you find yourself as an administrator, I hope there were some ideas you're picking up as you hear some of these stories that, well, how can we make it easier for folks like young people like Davis to get to these places? Well, maybe we don't have to make them travel that far.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to create more of these things in our own backyards. What are the kind of the predominant languages that we need to be more mindful of that we can create? Saskatoon, I'm giving you a nudge. Soto would be another good one here. And I'm really proud of all of the strides that have been made in the Cree language revitalization in our backyard here. I think of champions and supporters like Gordon Martell over the years, that have Gary Bowden, in our own backyard. These have been champions that have really kind of put the language back into the mainstream.
And Don Speidel as well.
Don Speidel,
Yeah.
exactly, And so for all of these languages, and as we look at our demographics in all of our respective cities and towns all across Canada and the world with all of us joining today, these are some of, I think, some of the solutions. Hopefully these aren't unique stories, but we invite these stories to be shared because you need to sit with your pen and be ready to capture all the solutions. And they give you outcomes and goals. If you were picking it up there, one of the things that Ira mentioned on there really quick was that there's an outcome and a measurement for you right there. And she said, let's not make people like Davis a novelty anymore. And right there, okay, so you could tell you're probably going to start, with small changes.
And also,
your baseline is low.
What else I love too is that Davis doesn't just take what's there and accept it for what it is. He, even as a child, he said, he picked up a doll that speaks, right? And he just wondered, well, how come it doesn't speak Cree, right? But whereas, in a lot of cases, we accept what's there, what's given to us, but he's constantly questioning and saying, no, this isn't who I am, right? It's not representing who I am. So, we really need to start questioning what's available to us and what can be, right? Like, why can't those dolls speak Cree?
And I think, one of the other things that, as I kind of took a step back from the presentation a little bit, I think about teachers and all the shapes and sizes all of those teachers come to us in, and I think about some of the stories that Megan shared and the interconnectedness in all of our relationships. And, as we progress into this afternoon, our next speaker and tomorrow's speakers, that is again going to be a theme that people are going to start to notice is that, that our interconnectedness and our relationships, but that we have teachers, we gave a lot of shout outs as we came back into all of those that are learning inside of classrooms, in a very formal, institutionalized teaching setting, I would say, but one of the neat things I think that this pandemic has brought, we spoke about it, alluded to it, is that it's reconnecting us to other classrooms, and other teachers that have been with us the whole time. And it's neat in my new work with the school. It just reminded me of Davis, and some of the lessons. Teachers come in all sizes, and I think, when he mentioned even the language as a spirit, like the acknowledgement that there's something there and there's language as a spirit and it can teach you. And some of the stuff that we're learning about now and working with lots of old people in my new line of work is they talk about all of the other teachers and lessons that we're missing. And in this current context of the pandemic, one of our other teachers telling us to slow down, and one that we're all connected to, and so our mother, you'll see in some of the other ones, our mother, in a lot of Indigenous cultures, our mother is our earth, it's the one who sustains us and provides us everything that we need. And during this pandemic, she told us collectively as society and showed us how interconnected we were when our economies all stopped, and we all had to stop because of the COVID-19 virus, and its transmission through humans and how connected we are. So even if you live in the most remote of places, everybody has to be on alert during these times, right? So it just showed us that and some things we need to pay more attention to, I think, and different possibilities. So one of the things that this presentation just made me reflect on teachers of all different stripes, all different sizes and shapes. And I just think that one of the things that I was taught to do as a helper was to, sometimes you got to facilitate difficult conversations like this, but sometimes it's not just to start conversations and leave. You actually have to sit in there yourself, just like Megan showed us this morning. Don't just tell other people what to do. That's a way to demonstrate leadership, and that a lot of teachers are showing us, that it's okay, to point out what people could be doing better. It's even actually better if you're doing it and showing them better with your own hands and stuff.
And I think too, we can learn from Davis, right? That young man, there's so much to learn from him. And, he says that, he had a lot of anger when he was younger, but it was only through hunting and his language that he was able to, to sort of release some of that anger, he said. And so, how the way that he connects with the land actually helped him to grow, right, as a young man. And it just, I think for me, it really showed me how important, I'm a very urban person. So originally from Toronto, I grew up in a bigger city, and those things are very foreign to me. So when I hear them, they really resonate, because I think those are things that we need to consider, right? When we think about Indigenous people also coming into the city and interacting, and those are the backgrounds that that some of them bring with them.
And one of the things when we started Wîcihitowin and when we tried to engage our particular audience, we know a lot of you guys are providing service. There's a lot of service that's being provided out there to hopefully Indigenous people, and hopefully these conversations actually can inform your practice and policies and those types of things. So we tried to bring different examples and articulate different, strategies. Hopefully folks can unpack through all these different conversations. But I think one of the things that I've also learned as I've kind of gotten closer to the language is that in all of our languages, baked inside of those languages are our instructions for life. And that's kind of one of the things that you could see through this young person, and that we're going to see as kind of we come back from our break and go into Shayla Stonechild's presentation. One of the goals and measurements and outcomes we're looking for is we want all those people in our society to be walking with their heads high, and I think that's one of the messages we can take. Is that when we put something back that shouldn't have been taken away in the first place, like language and culture, the different possibilities that we can all experience and all benefit from having a stronger society and helping one another. And that's what Wîcihitowin is about, and that's what the literal translation of the word actually means, is to help one another. So I think there's, I've got a whole laundry list of notes, and we could continue to go on and on and on about all the good things, but I can't, and I want to let you take some of that.
I just wanted to, in connection with teaching and learning, the whole idea of, all of us coming together for the Wîcihitowin conference year after year, is what we're hoping that comes out of this, right? Is that we're all learning from each other. And so, we have a lot of people online that have been with us and some new. And so I just wanted to give a few shout outs if I can.
Please.
Okay. So the CEO of United Way, Sherry Benson. Sherry, thank you so much for your support.
And your space.
And well, yes, absolutely. And your space. Jason Abig, the new
Incoming Chief Executive Officer of the Greater Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce.
And also Jordanos at Multicultural Council of Canada, of Saskatchewan. Thank you so much for tuning in and following us and supporting all the time. At the Multicultural Council, I know you do a lot of work in anti-racism and also with Indigenous groups. So thank you so much to Multicultural, and also Rhonda for all the good work that you do.
We've got a huge delegation from the Government of Alberta. I want to give some acknowledgement and a shout out to you. They were some of our early registrants. Nice. I know we had the Attorney General of Alberta kind of logging in this morning. April wanted to say drop the charges. Just joking. No, just keep them going, whatever it was. I'm sure there was reason. So no, but one of the things we just like to do is let's keep having fun here. It makes the learning easier. I think we need to keep laughing together. We need to keep, let's just keep this conversation going. We're having a ton of fun here.
Can I get a
couple more people? Yes, please,
sure?
Of course.
Okay, so Darlene Okamesa.
Yes, Darlene, thank you.
An incredible leader in our community, working with murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. Also working in the performing arts with Gordon Tutusas Nigawin Theater. Darlene, thank you for all the work you do in the community, and also for following and tuning in and watching and learning with us. And
I just,
Yeah.
you're gonna keep shouting out.
Yeah.
I just want to encourage lots of our visitors that may be new to Wîcihitowin. We want to get to know you. We hope you keep coming back. This thing is just getting started and kicking off in a new
and
way.
we kind of want to know who else is out there.
Yes, please.
From outside of our community. So please tweet and let us know who's out there, and we'll give you a shout out as well. I just wanted to also give a shout out to Angela Daigneault at the Saskatoon Police Service and the team there. Brad and Bo and Lisa, the great work that you do in community. Thank you so much for all that work and for often coordinating a lot of people in community around issues. It's challenging. The police, it's a challenging job. So you're doing a great job. Thank you so much. Please keep bringing us together. Keep talking. Neil, was there anybody else?
Actually, I think we just want to keep acknowledging all the supporters and all of you that are keep tuning in. We want to let folks know that we're coming into a break here. We're going to be taking a short break. The next session is going to start at 3 p.m. Please keep an eye on your emails. You will have the new active link that starts there. Again, social media, just wait, April, this just came in, hot off the press, sorry. I just got word. April has 5 new followers on Twitter.
Honest to God.
5 new followers.
Totally
I am going to be counting mine.
Neil's
Please.
65 followers. Neil has about 65, not new followers. I believe he has a total of 65 followers. So anyways, I think if you're going to add somebody to your list today or tomorrow, that would be April Sora. S as in Sam, O-R-A, April Sora. Okay. Don't forget, we have a little bit of time. We're going to go on a break. So please do this. There's a survey on the website. There's only 7 questions. Please, if you're not going to join us tomorrow, by all means, please.
You're all joining us tomorrow. You're all coming back.
Just take some time at some point, please, to do that survey.
We are going to be breaking till 3 p.m. It's about a 45-minute break.
So check your junk bin, just in case you don't have the link. Please check your junk bin. Apparently, some of them are going into people's junk bin. So if you but look for that most recent email.
Yeah, sometimes we're checking in at work, and sometimes
we're just learning too.
Firewalls and those kind of. I think that's a real tech term. Firewall. Does that sound legit to me? So, anyways, thank you so much. We're loving it. Let's keep having fun. Let's keep learning, and we'll see you at 3 p.m.
Great.